So let's talk about the Indian people. Not these ones, though. They're the wrong ones. We need the ones further east. The Indian people have a really interesting religion they do with all this Hindu business. For one, Hindus believe heavily in reincarnation for the purposes of learning all the lessons you will need to know. They believe you cannot learn everything in one lifetime like most other people believe. But I'm not here to talk about reincarnation. I'm here to talk about, as you may have guessed from the title of this video, Shiva. Who is Shiva, you ask? Shiva is the bringer of all death and destruction. He is literally the guy with the title Destroyer who will one day destroy the entire universe to end this cycle. Speaking of cycles, a cycle is exactly 2,160,000,000 years, at the end of which Shiva destroys everything in existence so the creator god Brahma can recreate everything in existence for another cycle. But let's talk about the first thing we should. Where did Shiva come from? Well, to start, Shiva is one of the Holy Trinity, which is comprised of Brahma, the creator, Vishnu, the preserver, and finally Shiva, the destroyer, who is the most powerful of the three. The origins of Shiva are interesting. Here's the story. There was once a time when Lord Brahma and Lord Vishnu, or rather Lord Brahma and Lord Vishnu, argued over their respective powers, as each believed they were the stronger and they wanted to prove it. During this undoubtedly heated debate, a pillar of blazing fire appeared in front of them. The roots and tips extended beyond visibility. The roots penetrated deep into the ground, and the tip pierced the skies and went beyond the heavens themselves. Amazed by the sight in front of them, both gods attempted to find the top and bottom of said pillar of fire. Brahma turned into a goose and flew to the top, while Vishnu turned into a boar and dug into the earth, both gods attempting to find their end of the pillar. This search eventually proved to be futile, as both gods failed in their respective missions, and by failed I mean they literally gave up because they couldn't find it. After their failed attempts, both gods came back to the place the pillar appeared in front of them, and saw Shiva manifesting in front of them. It was here that both gods understood Shiva's power to be much beyond their own, like way beyond their own. Almost like it could be over 9,000 of their own. Sorry. While Shiva is known as the Destroyer, that is not his only title. Shiva is also the Lord of Divine Energy, the Lord of Meditation, the Lord of the Arts, the Lord of Time. He is the Supreme Destroyer of Evil, and the Lord of the Devas, or Gods. I'm assuming that's pronounced Devas and not Divas, which is what most of these pictures of Hindu gods look like. Shiva also has a darker side as the leader of evil spirits, such as ghosts and vampires. He is also the master of thieves, villains, and beggars. Assuming you're more observant than a potato with a smiley face drawn on it, you may have noticed Shiva is the supreme destroyer of evil, while he also is the master of thieves and villains. So either he's a bit bipolar at times, or he's making evil so he can destroy it, presumably so he can keep one of his titles as a job to earn money to pay rent. I don't know. I'm not entirely sure where all this complicated Hindu stuff leads. So to me it seems you'd have to be the kind of nutcase to shove Toblerones in your eye sockets to want to worship Shiva. But, I mean, the Hindus would probably make the same argument towards Christians, so maybe I should have kept that opinion to myself. Speaking of Shiva, you may have noticed that he's entirely blue in all the pictures in this video, and to answer that, I'll tell you he was depressed. He wasn't, though. There's an actual reason behind the reason why he's blue. It has to do with an event known as the churning of the ocean. There's an actual name, but I forgot to write it down, and I'm halfway through this now. I don't want to Google. Following a war known as the War of the Gods, between the Devas, the gods, and the Asura, the demons, with the prize being the nectar of immortality, if I read the story right anyway. Both sides were cursed before this war by a singular sage, again, I think I read it that way, and were bereft of all strength, energy, and fortune. The two sides eventually diplomatically decided to try and churn the ocean to retrieve the nectar of immortality. Using the mountain Mandara, which rest on the back of Vishnu, who had turned into a colossal sea turtle to keep the mountain from sinking into the sea, the beings on both sides decided to use Vasuki, the snake that dwelled around Shiva's neck, as the rope. The two sides began to churn the ocean. The Asuras had been forced to hold the tail end of the great multi-headed snake, while the Devas held the head. The tail end was regarded as being impure, and so the Asuras were enraged by this agreement. The Devas agreed to hold the tail, while the Asuras held the head of the great serpent Vasuki. I forgot to change images. But as the Devas, or gods, and the Asura, or demons, churned the ocean, poison escaped from the mouth of the great serpent. As one story goes, or as another story goes, it came out of the sea they were churning. This terrified the gods and demons, because the poison was powerful enough to destroy all of creation. Both sides turned to Vishnu, yes, that's who your project's on. Both sides turned to Shiva for help, and Shiva, in response, drank the poison, which turned him blue. In other stories, the poison was stopped in his throat from spreading. I can't remember the name of the person who did that, though, and I wasn't smart enough to write it down, so way to go me. But that is about it for my video presentation on Lord Shiva, the being that will one day destroy all of the universe and end this cycle. You know, the more I think about Lord Vishnu again, the more I think about Lord Shiva destroying the cycle, the more I picture Thanos from Infinity War or Endgame, if you've seen those. Only Shiva isn't going to snap his fingers and destroy everyone and everything. In fact, I don't remember reading anything about how Shiva will destroy the universe at the end of this cycle. So I choose to believe he will put the universe in some sort of glass sphere, throw it up in the air, notch an arrow that somehow explodes, and let it fly like the man is clay pigeon shooting, but with everything at once. Yes, that does sound completely insane, but you can't prove me wrong. I don't think. I was going to include a thing on the worship of Shiva, but all I could find when I was Googling is how to build a Hindu altar, and it didn't have anything to do with Shiva, so I didn't include it, and how to clean the offering stand thing, and that didn't seem important either, but I may have been wrong on that. I did find out that if you're offering things to Shiva, he likes white flowers, so offer those.